Hi everyone, welcome to our Week 8 summary. This week we've looked at the third sub-strand of the Science Understanding strand of the Australian Curriculum Science, this of course is Earth and Space Sciences. One of the first things you were asked to do in this model was to have a look at the video Solar System 101 that was put out by National Geographic and think about whether there was any information in that video that was new to you or had changed. I know from my days at school the main thing that's changed is that Pluto is no longer a planet. This week's objectives were to broadly summarise the focus of the Earth and Space Sciences substrand, and basically this substrand is all about how the Earth's structure is a dynamic and changing thing, and that Earth has a particular place in space and the cosmos. We looked at the scope and sequence charts for Earth and Space Sciences to get a clear overview of what we need to teach from Foundation to Year 6. We looked at one content description, which was the Year 5 content. This was looked at in detail. We looked at it in the curriculum, the elaborations, and some resources related to that content in Scootle. And then we looked at the Primary Connections resource based around that Year 5 content and how you could use that to teach the content. There were then some other resources for you to read to fill in your own gaps that you might have in your understanding of science concepts and some of the frequent misconceptions for this substrand. Module 8.2 was called Dynamic Earth, and here we looked at the scope and sequence, and like all the other substrands, the scope and sequence works in a sequence from Foundation through to Year 6, and the knowledge builds up as you go through each of the years. Now, as I said, this module did look at the Year 5 content, which was about Earth as being part of the solar system. However, you've noticed I've circled the Year 4 content here. I just wanted to point out that the Assignment 2B folio, your Year 4 learning plan, will be based around this content. So you will need to become quite familiar with that. So one of the things that you will need to look at is the elaborations for this content. And you can see here a whole lot of different sorts of activities that you could do related to this content. So you will need to be looking at this for your Assignment 2B. Of course, to get some resources, you can click on this link here in the curriculum document, which will take you to Scootle, and that will come up with a whole list of resources all based around this content. So as you're looking at those resources, though, you need to just consider which of them would suit what you want to do, what might affect your decision. It might be what phase of the 5E model you're working at. For example, would one be more effective in teaching the content description than another? Would it depend on your students? So you should always look at the pros and cons of each resource. Module 8.3 was called Earth's Place in Space, and this is where you accessed Scootle to download the Primary Connections resource based around this Year 5 content. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at all these Primary Connections resources. They really are brilliant. Apart from the fact that they cover the science content, they're also cross-curricular, so you get some great literacy activities as well. And of course they're all based on the 5E model. Now you should be pretty familiar with this by now. You should have a pretty good understanding of each of the 5 phases and have a good understanding and appreciate how this model works to introduce concepts and develop understanding. Module 8.4 was the readings and resources for this module. So all mainly working towards building up your knowledge and some common misconceptions. The first one was looking at the Primary Connections Earth, Place in Space, and looking at pages 8 and 9, which had some great background information for teachers and what some of the student conceptions might be. And then there was also the Allen resource, Misconceptions in Primary Science, and that was Chapter 18, Earth and Space, sections 18.1 and 18.2. Some extra readings that you could have done were Cross and Bowden, The Essential Primary Science, and that was Chapter 9 in that resource, and Farrow, the really useful science book, which has some great information about science knowledge for you. As you're looking at all those and reading through all those things, you should be asking yourself the following questions. So what are the misconceptions or generalisations that students have about Earth's place in space, and what are the implications for your teaching? An example that I can give you from my own teaching is that I had a grade 3 one year, and we were studying the Earth's rotation and day and night, and the discussion moved on to a discussion about daylight savings. And I thought I did a fabulous job explaining about how daylight savings works, how we move our clocks on 1 hour, and that then gives us an extra hour of daylight at the end of the day. And when I asked if there were any questions, one of my more switched-on students put up her hand and asked, but how do you move the Earth on an extra hour so that we get that extra hour of daylight at the end of the day? So she had the misconception that to make daylight savings work, we actually had to move or shift the rotation of the Earth. So obviously my teaching wasn't so great there, and we spent quite a bit of time working on that misconception. Some of the other questions you should be asking yourself is how can you counter any misconceptions within your teaching, and what would be what other resources you've looked at that could help you with misconceptions. The weekly discussion this week, we didn't actually have a set task. This was because assignment 2A is due on Monday. So we actually suggested that you might like to look back through modules 4, 5, 6 and 7, which had weekly tasks directly related to assignment 2A. So I'm hoping that you were able to take that opportunity and go back through those modules just to make sure that your assignment 2A was on track, and hopefully you've all now submitted that and ready to move on to assignment 2B, which is pretty much the same as 2A. So we're doing a folio of learning plans, but this time we're focusing on years 4 and year 6. The year 4 plan is based around Earth and space science, so it's based around the information that you've been given in this module and that you've examined in this module. So well done for completing assignment 2A. I bet you're all taking a deep breath and a sigh of relief over that one. And we're on the home straight now, so hopefully you're able to get going with assignment 2B, and good luck with that, and we'll see you all on the discussion board.